something like that in person. I've seen a lot of these shows play out, people doing a little dance. I mean, what? Because they're dressed up? I don't get it. I don't get where the harm's
Are
coming
they
from.
dancing sexually? Are they gyrating in a sexual manner when you see them
gyrating like Elvis?
No,
Can they
not
do
like
an
Elvis,
Elvis?
like Britney Spears. They're dropping it to the flow. You know what they're doing. They're
stories about what drag shows are like. We make them sound very. Right now, we're experiencing pretty near record local inflation. We're dealing with a lot of real civic issues. And I feel like in times like these, there are some people who want to distract from those issues and lock us in an interminable culture war debate over things that don't really mean anything. In this case, we're talking about something that is, I think calling it a bit of a moral panic might even be a bit too charitable here, Now, when it comes to like, why should people care about this? Where are we deriving this fear from? Well, I know it's not from any studies. There are, to my knowledge, no studies or no collected data on like harm done to children due to drag shows. If there are, and I'm about to be blindsided by them, then I will be absolutely astonished. But I don't think that's going to happen. In the absence of those studies, when it comes to explaining how it is harmful for children to be at drag shows, what we often rely on is narrativization. We spin stories about what drag shows are like. We make them sound very scary. We use loaded language to charge people's emotions and direct them against the thing they already have a bias against. But that's the thing. That type of behavior, if you have a pre-existing bias, to a person who is terrified of birds, you can narrativize how it's irresponsible to let your children go to the boardwalk because there might be seagulls there, their big cloying mouths and their shriek piercing cries, the, tendency of them to swoop down on tourists and grab French fries, sometimes fighting with the tourist, clawing at their eyes. If a person has a fear of birds, this might be a very compelling argument. But we take kids to the boardwalk anyway. So I guess I'm just wondering, like, what specific elements of drag shows do we think are inappropriate for children? A drag show is just a kind of gender performance. It's wearing costume and affecting behaviors where gender identity or presented identity are like the central themes of the show. The sources of this go back literal millennia, In fact, I believe the term drag is literally taken from tendencies in Old English theater for men to dress up as women in theater parts. This happened all the way back in the Roman days. I mean, this goes back a long time. So why the panic now, right? Now, personally, I think it's because folks are scared of gender nonconformity, scared of gay people, scared of trans people, and want to fearmonger over them the same way they have been for a really long time, just standard screeching degeneracy, no thought, no wisdom, no introspection, just screech, screech. But if we were to say, this or that is inappropriate for children, what characteristics are we looking for? I'm sure there are some drag shows that are inappropriate for kids. I've been to some of them. And then there are some that are like PG, G even, the only possible harm, the only thing insipid about them or harmful that you could think of really is just the fact that there's something that a lot of people aren't comfortable with, which is drag clothing. But it's not really an argument, right? It's a free country. Discomfort with something doesn't mean that you should be able to bar people's children from being there, I don't like seafood. I don't think we should keep children from going to seafood restaurants. Anyway, those are my arguments. Go right ahead.
You got it. Thank you very much for that opening, Bosch. And if it's your first time here at Modern Day Debates, folks, want to let you know we are a neutral debate channel hosting debates on science, religion, and politics. We hope you feel welcome no matter what walk of life you are from. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button as we have many more debates coming up. For example, one this weekend, whether or not science is more compatible with atheism or theism. You don't want to miss it. It's at the bottom right of your screen. And with that, Alex Jones, or Alex Stein, thanks for being with us. The floor
basically the same. Okay, well, and I just want to start off by saying I think Vosh made a good point. There is a little bit of what I call gay panic that's a little, overdone right now. And, I'm considered conservative. And ever since I went to the Drag Your Kids to Pride event where kids are being sexualized and tipping the women like, or the drag queens like strippers, I'm getting a lot of outrage that people sending me normal drag brunch. And I'm like, come on, I don't want to go to a normal drag brunch. I think the focus of this is a drag event that is focused towards children. So, in that sense, I do think we're going a little too far because I have a libertarian mindset when it comes to that. If you want to be a drag queen, I think that's totally okay. See, for me, where it becomes a problem, because the problem is right now we have a society that's over-sexualizing people. And I think it was different when we were young. When I was on the internet, I had 56K modem, and I didn't get it till I think I was like 14 or 15. So we had a Playboy magazine that we'd like pass around. But now, with the invention of the internet and with the cell phone, the kid is on an iPad, they can literally type in boobs and they can find, all kinds of disgusting stuff, right? So they have more access to pornography now. So I think just overall, society is sexualizing children. Now, the reason why there's a panic going on with, kids going to drag shows, for me, I think the worst part about it is the sexual imprinting that it will have on a young kid's mind. I still remember one of the first times that I was ever attracted to a woman. The movie Teen Wolf with Michael J. Fox. At the beginning of the movie, the girl was in a bra. And I remember being sexually aroused, and that was a young thing. I don't know, and I remember losing my virginity like it was yesterday, and that was a long time ago because I'm a pimp on a blimp. But that's neither here nor there. So what I'm saying is, your first sexual experiences are often very memorable, a lot different than like the sexual experiences that I had in college. So the reason why is because your brain is very malleable. These things imprint on your brain. So the reason why the sexual drag show for a child is not okay is because, first of all, we shouldn't sexualize children. The same reason there's an age to drink alcohol, the same reason there's an age to go to the military, the same reason there's age requirements for anything. There should be an age requirement for a kid to go to a drag show, because when a kid goes to a drag show and they see a man dressed as a woman in a thong, in breasts, they might organically become sexually aroused. And then later on in life, they find out that was a man, and now they might have sexual confusion. And I think we live in a world where a lot of people have sexual confusion because they're desensitized by all the sexualization that's around them. So for me, it is the long-term effects of the desensitization of young kids' sexual experiences by going to an adult drag show. Now, you could say, oh, well, a kid going to Hooters is bad too. I don't necessarily think young kids should go to Hooters. I don't think young kids should be sexualized. I mean, should there be a limit? In states, there's age of consent laws. Maybe you could argue that when they're at the age of consent law, they could go to a drag show. But the one that I went to had very young kids. I'm talking about toddlers, 5, 6-year-olds that were on their video game, handheld Nintendos, and the parents were putting them down and making them watch the drag show. So this is the problem. Is we have a society now where parents are using children as like social media clout in order to transition them, in order to, over-sexualize them because they're trying to fix some sort of trauma that happens in their life. And I think Bill Maher, who's a huge leftist, he made a very good point. The amount of kids that are transitioning and on gender hormone therapy in Los Angeles compared to Ohio is, it's like 10,000 times more. I'm just saying that number generally, but it's a lot more. The reason why is because having a trans kid is a lot like having a vegan cat. It's the parents making the decision. So the problem, and how this connects to the drag pride event, is these kids aren't making the decision. It's their parents. These kids don't have the ability to get in a car, and they didn't even know what they're going to. I remember my mom would take me to the mall. I would hate it. Much less my mom never dragged me to a drag queen story time, thank God. But this is another reason. So in my experience, when I went to the drag your kids to pride event, where it was a drag race, or whatever you want to call it, a drag event for children, it was very unusual because there was glass doors where normally they'd have windows, and there were protesters outside. I was one of them, but they covered up the windows with paper, like trying to hide the event. So if everything was in there was just so kosher and non-sexual and not a big deal, I don't think they would have to hide in the shadows and do this. So for me, it's just wrong on all levels, letting a young person see this and get sexually confused, and then later on in life they might have sexual confusion, because your first experiences with any sort of sexual, whether it's an actual sexual experience, or seeing pornography, or seeing anything overtly sexual on a TV or movie, it does imprint some sort of memory on your brain that's different than when you're older and you're more desensitized to it, because you're extra sensitive to it the younger you are. So since you're more sensitive to the content that you're seeing at a younger age, it has more of a damage to your mind. So that's why we need to protect young kids and not take them to drag shows. That's why there should be legislation where we outlaw that. And I'm not saying we should outlaw drag shows. You can have drag shows all day long. Go ahead. I mean, I'm all about that libertarian mindset. I think that's totally okay. I think there is a little bit of over-panic against the LGBTQ community, but I think that's because the LGBTQ community is becoming, so ingratiated in everyday life. And this is the problem, is there's no difference between me and a gay man except for who they have sex with. You know what I mean? And so I don't understand why we define people by what they do in their bedroom. I don't care if you're gay, straight, lesbian, bisexual. I really don't care. I like you all the same. It's just your whole identity should not be what you do sexually. So that's the problem with these events, is that we're using a very sexual connotation at drag shows. Kids are tipping them as if they're a stripper. That's what happens at these drag events, these drag brunches. We tip them like you're simulating a strip club. I wouldn't be okay with a young kid going to a heterosexual strip club, much less a place where they're going to be sexually confused because they might be attracted, because some of these, drag queens, they're so effective with their makeup, they're so effective with their synthetic breasts and their thongs. You could very easily be confused. So it's that confusion and that sensitivity of their brain and their sexual experiences is why we have to protect kids at all costs from them going to these events. Now, listen, I'm not going to attack you. I don't want to get into like an ad hominem attack where I attack you. But what I'm gosh, sorry, I don't know. I meant to turn off my. Sorry. I'm getting a super chat. I thought I turned him off. I apologize. Okay, sorry about that. Let me go read that letterbox. Okay, what I'm saying, back to my point, is we're having a society where young kids are being the victim of child grooming. And you can say, oh, well, that's a conspiracy. Yet you look at Disney movies today compared to Disney movies in the past, when we talk about the same-sex relationships in those, that they'll keep it here in America, but they take out oftentimes in China and in these other foreign countries. In Saudi Arabia, they don't post the rainbow flag. So my problem is that we have a culture and corporations that don't have the ability to feel empathy, that are taking advantage of young kids and basically brainwashing them into a mindset of sexual confusion that they might not be ready for. And that I know at a young age, being 5, 6, 7 years old, I was not ready to hang out at a bar that's like for adults. And that's oftentimes where these drag brunches are. They're at bars because they serve alcohol. So we need to, as a society, stand up for our children, because I think they're the biggest victim of the child grooming. That's obvious. And now you can say, you look at all the teachers that have been caught sexually grooming children. You look at all of the people in the Catholic Church that have been caught sexually grooming children. You look at the border crisis, there's all kinds of sex trafficking. You look at Dennis Hastert, who was Speaker of the House, was a pedophile. You look at Jeffrey Epstein, who flew on the Lolita Express with Bill Clinton 26 times with no Secret Service. You look at Huma Abedin's husband, Anthony Weiner, was sexting young children. He went to jail for it. So there's people in high, powerful positions. Ketanji Brown Jackson, her resume is very lax and shot people that so I don't really think it is a conspiracy in my mind, even though I'm a conspiracy theorist, that there are people in powerful positions that are trying to sexualize our children. So for me, we have to do whatever we can to protect them, keep them away from drag shows, because that is just a slippery slope where it's going to be more sexual exploitation and more sexual confusion for young people that are super sensitive to the content that they're seeing.
Got it. Thank you very much for that opening statement. We're going to kick it into open discussion. Our guests are linked in the description. If you'd like to hear more, you certainly can by clicking on those links below to hear more about the reviews. Thanks very much, gentlemen. Cool.
All right, well, I've got a lot to respond to there. Unfortunately, 90% of it wasn't about the subject at hand. This is what I mean, unfortunately, about narrativization. There's a lot of stuff that you threw in there that, I mean, is about as meaningful as you might get from, like, a random sexual confusion, for example. You're going to need to sell me pretty hard on the idea that there is some kind of social cancer associated with children seeing men dressed as women and finding them hot, and then later realizing that they were in drag and getting damaged by it. That's just... I don't know if this is a self-report thing. I just don't consider this like a thing we're talking about. This is, you know, I leave to the concours of the brains of the people who experience this very strange problem. You know, I leave them to their own issues. You threw in there that trans youth are more common in California than in, I believe, Ohio. Yeah, obviously. Trans youth are more likely to make it known that they're trans if they know their parents are supportive, or if they know what trans people are. And awareness of what trans people are, and that you can share that with your friends and family, is usually what leads people to come out as trans. Ohio has presumably fewer trans-friendly parents than California does, so that makes total sense. We see similar patterns happening in other countries. We saw the same happen with a lot of other things, like being gay, for example, or even left-handedness, about 100 years ago. So we have that. I guess I want to get back to the drag thing, because you didn't tell me what about the drag shows you didn't like. You know? So you said, like, the kids giving the people money. Well, you can give like buskers money, you know, on 3rd Street Promenade in Los Angeles, or I'm sorry, in Santa Monica. Like there are people out there pretending to be robot men with like silver paint all over their skin, or who are playing the guitar, and like people will give their kids dollar bills to hand to the, you know, the person who's busking or performing or whatever. I don't know if there's anything weird about that necessarily. If there's like a drag show that's very like sexual and everyone's like super dressed down or whatever, I think that's inappropriate for kids. But that's not most drag shows. Certainly not the ones marketed towards children. Like the drag queen story hour thing, for example. You know, conservatives are so up in arms about this that the Texas GOP just named them in their list of priorities in 2022. And every time you see a picture from Drag Queen Story Hour, it's somebody wearing like more clothing than I am now. They're wearing more clothing than you are now. Like they're wearing like mountains of clothing. It's basically just a Halloween costume. You know, cons just don't like it because there's like a gender element there. But that's not linked to any harm. There's not like any way to substantiate the harm they've done there. I agree that we should protect children from adverse social effects, but the thing is, if you're going to make a psychiatric case for this, like there has to be some kind of evidence. We know that it's harmful, for example, like to sexualize children by making them the sexual object. Like, for example, if there's a child who's being like told to perform a dance or whatever, I think that can be pretty bad. Or like the idea of like grooming, like an older person just trying to like come on to a younger person, or try to like prepare them for exploitation. That's obviously very bad. But cons use grooming so ubiquitously now that grooming includes like seeing a guy in a dress, and that's just, I mean, you know, that's just really silly. And it goes back to the meritization thing. You know, if you're afraid of birds, that sounds scary, but that's a you thing. You know?
Yeah, well, okay, and I'll just address a couple of things you said. I think at the beginning you said, you know, there's no proof that sexualization of the child
Wait. I didn't say that. I just said that sexualization of a kid would be negative for them.
But what was the first thing you said? Because I was talking about how it has long-term effects. You said there's no studies that would find that it would have
the idea of it being harmful for a kid to see a guy in a dress and think they're cute, but then later realize they're a guy and be damaged by that is a completely fictitious fragment of your or somebody you know's psyche being projected into this conversation.
Well, this is why I would disagree with that. So if somebody was molested by their priest, by a male priest, you know, at a young age, maybe they were touched sexually by a male, do you think that that would cause sexual confusion later on in life?
What does molestation have to do with seeing a guy in a dress? How are these related?
Well, because it's not just seeing a guy in a dress.
I think Hiroshima was bad too, in case you were going to ask me.
That's not what these drag queen shows are, Vosh.
No, you said seeing a drag queen and finding them hot, which kids find, I mean, kids can find people hot. You know, I know when I was like in elementary school, I thought my teacher was hot, whatever. And then like they realize, first of all, I don't know how the kid would be, if they're at a drag show, I think they know it's a drag show. But even if they didn't like know or whatever, or if they just saw a drag queen walking in the street, like during a festival or something, I had no idea. And then like later they realize it was drag and that hurt them. I don't get that. I like, this seems made up.
So you don't think sexual abuse at a young age has like a long-term effect?
Wait, no, I keep saying something, and then you're like, okay, well, you do realize the Holocaust is bad, right?
No,
we're not talking about sexual abuse. We're talking about finding.
This is what I'm saying. Well, here, let me just say this point.
Use the words that I use, not like your.
Well, you use so much word salad.
It's
hard to repeat it. But this is my point being, is that these people, when they go to these events, it's not like you said tipping a busker outside, like you're tipping somebody playing the piano or playing the guitar in the street. It's not that. Oftentimes, it's simulating like a strip club. And I'm sure you've been to a strip club. You put money in their G-string, you put money in their clothes, and it's a very sexual connotation. So it's not the same as out on the street putting a dollar bill into a hat. Would you? But agree?
I don't think most of these drag shows are having kids walk up and like put dollar bills in these G-strings.
You didn't.
Usually,
watch
people
my
in
video.
drag are wearing a lot of. No. I'm not saying it doesn't. Bad things happen everywhere. I'm sure there are drag shows that have happened, which I believe are irresponsible. But you're talking about all drag shows and children. And mind you, the point we're on right now isn't the tipping. It's on the sexual confusion thing. I don't get that. How does it harm a kid to see or to be attracted to like a drag queen or whatever? Then later they're like, oh, it was a drag queen. Like, what's the sexual confusion?
Would you argue that you're more sexually sensitive at a younger age and that you get desensitized towards sex as you get older? Would you agree with that, Bosch?
I don't know what that means exactly. I think that you're more confused about what you want.
Bosch,
Sensitive is a very...
With all due respect, With all due
Well,
respect,
wait,
you
no,
understand
wait,
what that
absolutely.
means.
Wait, hold on, because it depends.
Okay.
It depends what you mean by sensitive. Because if by sensitive you mean like susceptible to, then the answer is no. I'm way, way, way more perceptive of sexual influences as an adult than I am as a kid.
Let's
So
just
that's like a broad
let's make it
term.
easy. Let's make it easy. The more times you see a breast, the first time you see a breast, your brain have a bigger chemical reaction than the 1,000th time you see a breast.
I imagine. I remember it being pretty cool the first time I saw it. Yes.
That's exactly my point.
But I would have been zero. My mom would have been breastfeeding me.
What I'm saying is we're not talking about the time, and we know that you were raised on formula. So it's not a big deal.
Wait. I was sorry.
I'm just teasing.
Yeah?
I'm just teasing.
No, well, wait, hold on.
I was
Listen,
a breast baby.
if you had to wait till you were 18 to see a titty, that's on you, okay? Listen, I got
I didn't wait till
early,
18.
and I gotta say,
remember my first titty like it was yesterday. That's my
listen,
point.
I didn't even have a prefrontal cortex developed when I saw my first titty, and I guess I don't feel like getting breastfed naturally by my mother led to me having negative confusion down the line. I don't get it. Like. You see a drag queen. It's not all drag queens are like guys dressed up like girls or whatever, but a lot of them are. You see that, like, oh, they're cute, and maybe you think they're a drag queen. Where's the harm? What's the harm? Where is the harm? Like, what psychiatric damage would you be able to identify as a product of that?
I just think it'd be very simple because people would have sexual confusion later on in life. People are very insecure. Most people are insecure, right? And so let's say later on in life they realize, oh, well, I was I personally from the fact similar to that of being molested by a person of the same sex or even an opposite sex.
And why do you think that?
Because your first sexual experiences can, if they're like traumatic or you didn't want them to happen and by your choice, like a parent dragging you to a drag show, it can oftentimes be, very traumatic. Is my point.
So if you met someone who was molested as a kid, and you would be like, oh yeah, dude, I felt that. When I was 6 years old, I saw a drag queen and they were hot, and later I realized they were a drag queen.
Well,
that's molestation. Isn't that kind of downplaying molestation massively? Like, isn't that kind of mostly disrespectful to victims?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so at all. I think by exposing kids even to pornography is a form of molestation, and I think that this would be a sexualization of people wearing clothes that is very sexual. So yeah, I would think that this is a form. Is it as
We're
bad?
only talking about finding them attractive, not about sexual clothing.
I think there's a spectrum of molestation. There's worse molestation. I'm just saying all molestation is bad, but I'm saying it can be worse. There's forms of molestation that are worse than others. So
and this would be a form of molestation which involves no contact whatsoever. That's a pretty powerful telekinetic molestation, perhaps?
You don't have to physically. If I was to expose my genitals to somebody, that is a form of molestation. You don't have to touch them. Would you agree?
Well, we're talking about fully clothed people here, so I don't feel.
Yeah,
like
but they're not necessarily fully clothed. I wouldn't consider a thong fully clothed.
We're not talking about. I've been to drag shows. Thongs are by far not the most common, and I've yet to see, by the way, a drag show from any of these right-wing ops undercover of like a drag show where anyone was wearing a thong. Usually they're thighs.
I can show you. I can pull it. I mean,
if you find me that,
let's call it a bikini cut then.
Well,
I still, when I was a young kid,
if you find me that though, then I'll disagree with it. But you're the one attacking drag queens as a concept here.
No, and I don't want to attack drag queens as a concept. I actually said that drag queens are fine. I don't want children to experience drag shows when they're too young. I think that they should wait to be of age because I think that it has long-lasting traumatic effects.
Can you point to any evidence of that? Because we have evidence that actual molestation, the word when used correctly, is harmful to children. Quite a bit of that. It's pretty obvious.
If your parents drag you to an event that you did not choose to go to...
No, you're narrativizing again. Alex,
I'm not narrativizing. So do you think these children are getting in their cars that they can't legally drive and going and finding and seeking out these drag events on their own? Or do you think they're being taken there by adults?
You're not getting me off topic. Adults choose every place children go to, obviously.
Exactly. So if a kid doesn't get to choose where they get sexualized, that's a form of...
We're only talking about you saying that seeing a drag queen just maybe like 50 feet away, thinking they're hot, and then later realizing they're drag queen is comparable to molestation. That is.
I'm not saying 50 feet away. Across the street.
50 feet away can be at
you're
the
much closer. Well, what I saw
wait.
touching
How could that? How could that? No,
it wasn't 50 feet across the street. A drag show. You're not 50 feet away.
Alex, first of all,
I do have to jump in just to reset it.
Yeah, I just want to say, Alex, first of all, Let me remind you of what you're saying here, okay? Because you keep running to different topics like you're scared of the one that you brought up.
I'm not scared of any topic. You're trying to change the topic.
To molestation. To see a drag queen as a child.
At a drag event.
Fine.
At a drag event.
So
not
wait.
just walking down the street.
So wait,
we're talking about going to a
prevent that
drag show.
happening?
I'm not talking about, oh, you just see a drag queen, you see Tu Wong Fu or whatever. You
What
just see a
would
movie.
prevent
I'm
that
talking
from
about
happening
going to
just
a drag
out on the
show.
street? If the
What I'm
issue
talking
is
about
just seeing
is
them.
going-
Wait, Alex, please, you have to know your response.
Let me
Alex,
clarify
help you.
what I
I'm
mean.
helping you. Alex,
You're not helping me. I'm trying to tell you what I mean. Gosh, you're trying to change what I'm trying to say.
Alex, just for people to be able to do that.
I just want to lay out what he said so he can explain it to me. I just want to be
I
educated.
never said
by
about
Alex.
across the street, Bosh. I
So
never said that.
you said looking at a trans, or sorry, not a trans
At a
person,
drag show.
a drag
Looking
queen.
at a drag show.
So
looking at a drag queen
this
at a drag
effect,
show.
this effect of sexual confusion, of being errantly attracted to a drag queen, then later realizing they're a drag queen and being confused, that can only happen at a drag show, but it can't happen if you just see a drag queen outside on a smoke break. It's not possible for that to happen to a
No,
children.
that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying it's more likely to happen at these drag events where they're up
Are they
close
like
and personal
cognito
with the
hazards?
drag-
They just like wound children in their
Listen,
presence?
Bosh, I get what you're trying to do, but I'm talking about a kid at a drag show where they're tipping them and they're 2 feet from the drag queen, not just seeing a drag queen.
Wait, no, we're not
tipping
talking about
not
tipping.
seeing a
We're
drag
talking about
queen
you
walking
comparing.
outside.
Alex, you're doing it again. We're just
I'm not
talking
doing
about
it.
the
You're
sexual
doing it.
confusion
You know
thing.
what I'm talking about.
No,
Bosh.
because you
know
keep
what I'm-
talking about other things. We're
Bosh,
talking
okay,
about
let
the
me make
sexual
it clear.
confusion
Let me
thing.
make it clear. This is a sexual implantation. When you go to it, when a child goes to a drag show and they tip the drag queen and they're interacting with the drag queen, that is what I'm talking about. That is a sexual implantation. I don't understand how you cannot understand that. I'm
what
not
about
talking
that?
about walking a street 50 feet away. I'm talking about the kids that are going to a drag show, like the topic of this debate, why that is bad.
So
And
what
I
if they-
know
what
that
if
you
they don't
understand what
tip?
I'm
Is that-
saying. So you're
what if
trying
they
to,
don't
you know,
tip?
distract.
What if
It
they
doesn't
don't tip
matter.
them?
It's talking about going to a drag show and experiencing the event up close
Then
and
why
personal.
talk
Not
about
just
tipping?
walking by them at a street. Because tipping's a
Alex,
big
you
part
keep
of
bringing
drag
shit
shows.
up,
If
and then you're like,
such,
wait,
if
no,
you're
not
such an
that.
expert of drag shows, you know that's a big part of it. They get tipped money. Do you understand?
I go to adult drag shows. I don't go
And
to
do they
kids'
tip
drag
them?
shows.
Do they tip them?
Often, no. I've been to ones where they don't. Usually the stage is too high for you to even throw money at. It just flutters in the air. Look, so tipping's not the relevant part there. So I don't
The
know why
relevant
it's
part
being
is
brought up.
going to the drag show, Bob.
So
The relevant part is
so
kids
again,
being exposed to drag queens
remind
at a
me-
drag show. That's the
Remind
relevant
me
part.
where the harm is coming from, because I thought you were saying the harm is coming from merely being attracted to a drag queen as a kid, which can happen regardless of the context in which you see a drag queen. It can happen anywhere. It can happen from the TV. Like, that's not.
No, that's not the same. The harm is much worse when you're ingratiated inside of a bar that's for people that are 21 and up that you couldn't even
Why
get
do
in
you
if you're
keep
18.
adding things that aren't the drag queen bit? You're like,
This
I'm
is a
asking
drag
you
queen
if the
event.
drag-
Drag events happen at 21 and up of places. That is where they.
What if it's
they-
not at a 21 and up? place
It's
and
like,
there's
it
no tipping?
usually is. It usually is. Other than drag queen story time, and in those situations, they don't tip, but still they're there. They're interacting up
It's-
close with the drag queen.
It's not at all necessarily true. You know, kid-friendly drag events aren't like the centerpiece of drag events generally, but when they happen, they can be hosted in all sorts of places. So what's even the issue with it being like a bar? Like, if they clear out the alcohol, it's just a room,
Well,
right?
they didn't clear out the alcohol at the event in Dallas. Their parents were still drinking, so I don't think that's okay.
I
They're
haven't
in a
been to
place-
Dallas. Well, parents
Well,
can drink
there-
at like a restaurant with their kids there. I'm just saying, like, the kids can't get at the alcohol. I don't know what the issue is with like the place normally being 21 plus. My dad had beers when I would go with him to like.
I understand your
restaurants.
dad had beers. I'm sure he had a lot of beers. I can tell. What I'm saying is, it's not
What do you
about
mean?
your dad.
Wait,
had
Alex,
beers.
hold on. If we want to, what are we? If we want to get into ad-homs here, okay? I'm holding
I
back
just said
on
I
this.
can
I'm
tell
a
you.
light
You're
touch,
talking about
right?
yourself.
I'm
about
touching you
beers.
with a
I said
feather
I can
duster
tell.
right now, Alex. I'm going easy and slow for you.
I agreed with you, Bosh, and that's not an ad hominem attack. I said your dad probably had a lot of beers. What are you complaining about?
That's a hard work.
I know, and I'm sure he is. I'm not even
His blood
saying.
runs
I'm just
thick.
saying.
He's gotta keep
You
it
just said my dad had beers, and I said I'm sure your dad had a lot of beers, and all of a sudden you got triggered. What? I'm
Why are
agreeing
you
with you.
running away from the implication?
I'm not running away. I want to talk about this thing.
when
What you're
I-
trying
when
to
I
do
made
is
that
you're trying to
comment, I
run
was
away.
actually
You're
being
not even letting me
complimentary.
speak,
You're
Bosh.
a weasel,
That's the
dude.
thing. I'm not a weasel at all. I'm standing up for what I believe in, and I'm saying and speaking the truth, and I'm
You're
trying to
kneeling
clarify
for what you
everything
believe.
so
You're
that
sitting
you
on the
understand
ground.
in a very. See, Bosh, you're trying to do this because you know that you're wrong. You know that it's not okay for kids.
I don't even know how kids are getting harmed here. I still don't even know. So I agree.
You don't understand
that
how
drag
kids are being
shows are
harmed when they're at it. Yes.
I understand how it's inappropriate if there's like the stripper show. There are some drag shows that are like basically strip shows, but almost every one that I've been to, as an adult, for ones that kids can't get into, usually has them wearing more clothing than I'm currently wearing, dressing the same way that you'd see like, I don't know, Britney Spears dress in a music video, which I guess like is sexually charged. I mean, Britney Spears was a sex icon for a good portion of her career, but I don't think that you could say like, yeah, children are being done harm comparable to molestation when they see something like that in person. I've seen a lot of these shows play out, you know, people doing a little dance. I mean, what, because they're dressed up? I don't get it. I don't get where the harm's
Are they dancing sexually? Are they gyrating in a sexual manner when you see them?
Gyrating? Like Elvis?
No,
can they do
like
an Elvis?
Like Britney Spears. They're dropping it to the flow. You know what they're doing. They're twerking that booty. They're shaking it up and down, around and around. You know, I know you're trying to play cute. You're trying to give me the old cute buzz.
Are you trying to make me think of this the way you're thinking of this right now?
No, I just know what happens. You're acting like these drag queens just. What I'm saying, Boss, you act like these drag queens just stand up there and just, you know, do a stand-up comedy routine or something. They don't do that. They go out there and they shake their breasts and ass for money. That's what happens at these events.
I've been to a drag stand-up comedy.
I'm sure they exist. They do, but that's not what this is. We're not talking about drag comedy shows.
Performativity of the outlet. You don't have to dance
about drag shows where they're dancing and they're shaking their butts, simulating as being like a strip club.
At this
I have
point,
videos to prove it. And you admit it.
Referring to skimpy outfits and sexual dancing. So that's what. So all this other shit about like tipping and sexual confusion.
Do you think as a kid, do they get attracted if they see like on a playground, if they see up a girl's skirt? Would a kid get attracted to that? Just seeing up a girl's skirt?
You keep asking me questions about what kids get attracted to, but I guess when I was a kid, yeah, I would have found it cute to see.
So do you think it's okay for a drag queen in a skirt to lift up their skirt, even if they have a bathing suit bottom under, even if they're fully covered? Just an insinuation that they're lifting up their skirt when they dance. Do you think that that's sexual and that a kid could accidentally get attracted to that? Is that possible, Bosh?
Like that, like the Madonna thing, where she like puts her skirt down from the wind, but it blows up. You know what I'm referring to? You don't look that up. They probably okay. Yeah,
Marilyn Monroe. Yes, where the event goes up.
And
there's a lot of drags that dress in Marilyn Monroe where they lift up their dress and do that. That's actually a common thing at drag events.
Yeah, I guess that can happen. I don't necessarily know if that's bad. I mean,
you're telling me a kid seeing a simulated upskirt that you just said would you be attracted to at a young age? That's not bad. Is that what you're saying?
I'm trying to think. I feel like every movie from the 1980s would now be comparable to basketball. Because like the level of like sexual suggestion that they're on here is ubiquitous in a ton of media, like Grease. I mean, like if you go back, I'm worried that I could go back and watch like Seinfeld episodes of the Model Republican, and they'd be like, okay, this episode right here, this is childhood, and it's like because at one point like a girl does like a sexy dance, and she's like the girl here.
That's not. I guess apples and oranges.
What is the apple?
We're talking about at a drag show. If a girl lifts up her dress, if the drag queen lifts up their dress, even if they have gold undergarments on, it can have a sexual connotation. And a kid can have lasting effects similar to that if somebody were to expose their genitals to a children.
No, I absolutely do not believe that doing a sexy dance is in any way comparable to flashing somebody. I have no idea where you would get that from.
Well, because there's videos of drag queens. I can even pull them up. I don't want to get a strike on YouTube where they have the synthetic breasts, and there's a viral video where they're shaking them up and down with no coverage. And because the synthetic breasts look so real, they look like real breasts. So that does happen where they are literally simulating being naked, dancing in front of children.
Was this in front of kids?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, then I think that could be pretty. Okay, so we found a thing we agree on. I don't think that should happen at kid-friendly drag shows.
But we agree.
Well, yeah, we go. But I've yet to go to a drag show, adult or child.
I'll pull it up. I don't want. We can't show it on YouTube, but I'll pull it up right now. I'll find it and pull it up.
Look,
but what
there
I'm
are
saying
lots of things in our society that I think are inappropriate to expose children to that we commonly accept for. You know, child beauty pageants, which are pretty common, to be fair, in red states, are definitely one of them. I do not like the kid dance drag thing. I don't like kids being expected to model it in any way, shape, or form. I think that shit gets really gross. You know, Hooters has always been.
I agree with you on that. I think stage moms take it too far as well. I think that's another parental issue where the kids aren't making the choice themselves. So go ahead.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, yeah. Most of this stuff. I mean, if a kid's going to use it, it's almost always going to be pressure. I think it's important to like have conversations about these things, but like I don't know if you're Catholic or whatever. But we got to be real. Like, a lot of this is about the gay trans movement. You know, this
yeah, but see, I
this
agree with you on that.
fear
Boss,
isn't
let me cut you
present.
off. I agree with you. I think there's way too much gay panic, or whatever you say. I agree with you 100%. But see, that's the problem with this. It gets you know, convoluted because there are drag shows that are now being more targeted towards children. I'm fine with drag shows. And that's what I'm saying on the conservative side. Now, because I went viral going to this thing, all these people send me regular drag queen stuff. Oh, you should go there and expose them. I'm like, dude, I don't care. This is a drag show for adults. Let them do it. Let them have fun. I would even go. I mean, I'm saying I don't care. I don't have any problem with a drag show. I want to make that clear. I have no transphobia, no homophobia. I literally don't. I have gay family members that I love, you know, with all my heart. So I don't have any problem with that. But I do agree with you. Now a lot of this, both the Christian conservatives have a huge problem with it, and I think that gets overshadowed because, listen, one group of the political party can make us overshadowed. It's like, I'm not QAnon. I'm a conspiracy theorist. Everybody says you're QAnon. So if you say you're conservative, everybody thinks you're part of the Christian far right. I'm not, and I do think there is some gay panic in the Christian far right, for sure. But I would tell you, just as a person that's on that side, that's actually a lot less than you think, and it gets more attention than it should, because we have massive problems in America with inflation, gas prices, the border. I mean, there's a litany of issues that America faces, and this gets all of our attention. And I actually personally feel a little guilty because the biggest problem in America, I mean, drag shows, children drag shows, it's not a good thing. That's probably not the worst problem. That's a parental problem. We need to overall fix
I'm glad we agree it's not the worst problem. I mean, at the end of the day here, it doesn't really matter what you say, because the only harm to children you've been able to define is something which is specific to drag shows, which you claim is the confusion they would feel if they don't realize a person is attracted to.
But it can be more than that.
That's like, but that's a cool specific thing. You couldn't apply that.
No, I can't because this a kid can become sexualized earlier, and then that might.
I don't think a kid.
You could
like,
argue this.
I don't think a kid
let me
becomes
just make my
sexualized
point.
if they see like someone dancing flirty. Like I saw in middle school. When I was in middle school, there was like the cheerleaders or whatever, and their dances were kind of, you know, they'd sashay their hips or whatever. But I feel like I don't know if that harmed anyone. I think they were just dancing. A lot of dancing just involves moving your hips around. Like dancing.
I would argue that people at your same age, like in middle school, and you're in middle school, that's okay. But when you're in middle school and you're seeing adults, these drag queens in middle school, they're adults.
But those are cheerleaders. Adults cannot be adult cheerleaders.
Yes, but they're still at least being organically attracted to people your age. You're not being attracted to adults, which is not child. Children and adults should not be having any sort of sexual relationship.
Well, but it's not dancing around other people isn't a sexual relationship. I don't think. Like I don't think that's a sexual relationship.
Lifting up your skirt, and when you're at a drag show and they lift up their skirt and they twerk, that is sexual. It is similar to a cheerleader, but it's much different because it's being done by an adult that is of age, when it's illegal for them to do any sort of sexual things with a child. That's why this is just cut and dry.
It's not. Wait, sexual relationship is not being in a proximate space while one person does a dance that would have been acceptable in a PG movie in the 80s. I don't buy that that's like a sexual relationship. Not only do you have adult cheerleaders at sports games who thousands of people can watch from pretty close up, and they're often dressed far more skimpy than you would see on like a drag queen, but also those cheerleaders in middle school would have had to have been trained by an adult former cheerleader who would have had to have been doing those dances in front of the kids in order to teach them to do those dances in front of an audience of children and adults. Like,
yeah, but it's not in a sexual manner. You're trying to say a cheerleading routine is the same as a drag show, and that's provably false.
Wait, you're right. I've seen cheerleading routines way more risque than like parts of drag shows that I've been to. That is 100% true. And they wear less clothing. Drag shows, usually they're wearing like, 15 pounds of clothing because it's part of their ostentatious wardrobe. But the cheerleaders are wearing.
Yeah, but Lady Gaga can wear 15 pounds of clothing and still show her sex, and still show her breasts and vagina can still be accentuated in a manner. It doesn't matter how much clothes they have on. A lot of times, the extra clothes actually accentuate the sexual organs or the parts that a kid could accidentally be attracted to. So just because they're wearing a lot of stuff doesn't mean that their genitals are not able to be seen. Doesn't mean their butt is not able to be seen. It doesn't mean their cleavage is not able to be seen just because they have big shoulder pads.
I think it's okay.
Accentuate the sexual parts.
I think it's okay to dance while having cleavage around children. I guess I feel like we'd have to rewrite the fundamentals of society. We'd have to like segment everyone the way they like the way they segment like men and women in like Orthodox churches to the children, the adults. Like, are we worried about this really? Like, what about all the Super Bowl halftime shows that we look at? Like, is all of this grooming? Is all this sexual confusion? Is everything like all like not
are you asking me this Hollywood
Sesame Street level?
Are you asking me this Hollywood sexualized stuff and groom children? Yes, I would argue.
No,
yes.
well, don't equivocate. We know Hollywood people have a, let's say, a rough history, but talking about like halftime shows or like 80s TV series,
that halftime shows that are put on by agents and managers and choreographers that are Hollywood, yes, I would say.
Wait, the kids who watch that are being molested because they're seeing like
probably you could argue maybe slightly molested, like
no, you can't argue that. Well, I guess you can argue whatever you want. It's a free country,
well,
but
yeah, I
no,
mean,
that's insane.
Well, just look at Janet Jackson when Justin Timberlake exposed her boobs, and people went crazy about that because they didn't want children seeing a woman dressed with a pasty. You wouldn't let a little kid go to a strip club because they have strip clubs where they have to have pasties and a thong on. Well, you wouldn't let a kid see that. So why would you want to see that at the halftime show?
They got an FCC fine for that.
Which they should, which makes sense because
so
in
that
society
wasn't
we
even
don't
a
want to
deliberate
sexualize
part
our
of the
children.
routine. And also, I don't like nobody like no children around the world were hurt by some kind of fucking wardrobe malfunction.
You don't know that.
See,
Bosh, you don't know that because it can have a domino. Let me just finish my point. You don't know
domino.
It can have no. Listen, it can have a domino effect because now they're like, oh, inquisitive, I'm curious, I saw a boob. Now they want to see more boobs. So now they're going to figure out the ways to find sex. Before you're exposed to sex, you don't really know about it. You don't need it. And so once you get exposed to it, then you want to find more information about it. And then you have friends, and then you have a more sexualized mindset.
So wait, so far,
can be almost
so far, nothing you've described is abnormal. That is literally biologically how we're wired. Everything that you just described is literally how we were functioned, like designed to function.
Yeah, but we're not function. Adults are not supposed to sexualize children. That's by
That's
law.
not
You
what
know
sexualizing children would mean. The children are the ones being sexualized, not children who watched a sexy dance.
Children being exposed to sex without them choosing it is
They're not being exposed to sex. They're being exposed to people doing dances where people shake their hips.
In a sexual manner, or seeing breasts, or seeing sexual organs.
You realize this would implicate almost every human to have ever lived, right? Like maybe you're. Wait, hold on. Do you think that you're like molesting children around you if you're out on the street with your wife and you like pull her into a deep kiss or you like put your arms around her waist? That's a pretty intimate gesture right there. How
I don't think kissing your wife in public is the same as showing your booty in a sexual manner where you're trying to be overtly sexual. I think it's a lot different than a kiss.
If with a deep kiss, you can absolutely be making effort to be sexual. And
okay, then I agree with you. I don't think kids should be seeing people just make out French kissing everywhere either. I mean, you know what? I mean,
so like
I just don't think kids. I don't think kids should be exposed to sex at a young age.
That's not sex. It's a deep kiss. Sex is a different thing.
You're trying to compare apples and oranges at these
No,
drag
you've
shows.
had sex. Wait, I know you've had sex before. There's more that goes into it.
I've never had sex.
But let me explain, okay? Deep kissing is at least 3 or 4 stages behind sex in public. All right? I don't know how, like, any cleavage, any like shaking your hips, like all this now, any halftime show. Kids can't watch Eurovision. Well, that's Europeans, thank God they don't. Can't watch Dancing with the Stars. Like any, or actually, I'm struggling to think of a single dance competition now that you wouldn't consider being molestation. Do you think you might be inventing harm where it doesn't exist? There's no psychological...
First of all, Dancing with the Stars is not the same as a drag show. It's not the same because you're watching that. First of all, and seeing it on television is not good, but we're talking about drag shows, seeing it in person, simulating sex, tipping it, and that's the point of the debate, and that's why it's not okay.
You said tipping wasn't the point of it, though. And you also said that there'd be like a form of molestation.
You said buskers. It's like there's the same tipping of buskers, some band playing outside on the promenade. Not the same. You're tipping them in a manner that's simulating being at a strip club.
You're not always tipping, but if you are, I don't think there's anything wrong with tipping. You're saying the problem is the sexual behavior. But when you define the sexual behavior, it seems to encompass like 40% of all media ever produced by humanity. So
No.
and Dancing with the Stars, by the way, Dancing with the Stars gets very risque. Okay, now I'm not out there watching all the Queen shows or whatever. But, they get pretty down and dirty. They get pretty horny.
Just put it this way. You've watched RuPaul's Drag Race, correct?
Actually, no, I have. I've seen screenshots.
You've seen probably close to it. Would you? And I guess we're talking about how this honestly, but do you think RuPaul's Drag Race has more sexual jokes and sexual connotations than
Sexual jokes? Absolutely. The performances themselves, though, I think are more sexual. And actually, from what I've seen, I think RuPaul's isn't like marketed as an all ages thing, but the jokes, it's more jokey drama, catty bit shit there. But in terms of the performances themselves, I'm pretty sure Dancing with the Stars regularly has like more lascivious dancing than the stuff for RuPaul. Because everything I see the RuPaul drag it's some stupid bullshit, They're like, some jokey shit to prime up drama between all the catty gays.
No,
I guess the jokes are
I've seen RuPaul Drag Race. I mean, I like reality TV, so I've seen it. I'm just telling you, there is more of a sexual connotation in a drag show than Dancing with the Stars. ABC has a thing called standards and practices. They have to be very careful with what they expose children to. And they're a lot less lenient than RuPaul's Drag Race, which is on cable. That's just
I'm pretty sure I've seen some Dancing with the Stars couples that have danced, and they're basically.
But Bosch, we're not arguing about Dancing with the Stars.
Well,
We're talking about kids' drag shows. I know. You're trying to obfuscate what's really happening. We know.
The problem is, like,
we know that, and you admitted this, but let's just admit you admitted that there are some drag shows that kids should not go to. Correct?
There are lots of things that I think.
So,
of course,
what I'm saying is, I think. Well, let's just come to it. Listen, I like to debate, and I like to do it in a friendly manner. I think you're doing it in a friendly manner. It would be, rude. What I'm saying is, we should come to some sort of agreement that you do agree that some drag shows are too sexual.
Yeah, but yes, but to be clear, I would feel that way about almost any type of medium. Like any medium, I would think that there are some things in there that
gather tribute
or unacceptable.
Or face my curse.
Well, I'm just trying to coalesce this argument. So we can,
but this is the issue. You frame it like this isn't like a targeted thing, but the problem is that, as far as I can tell, when you get past all the external threat, your definition of sexual content is inappropriate. Would extend to a significant portion of popular media. But the drag shows with kids at them are what gets fixated. No, well, you talk about like cleavage and shaking your butt. How do you? I'm pretty sure almost all modern dance anything are going to involve some kind of butt shaking. Your hips and legs are some of the most powerful muscles in your body. Gyrating your hips is how you position yourself from like a lot of dance moves. I did in India back a couple years ago.
I'm going to say it's both not good, but do you think going to a strip club has more of an effect on your psyche than seeing a movie with a strip club scene in it? Do you think that one is more effective?
Like as a kid?
Yes.
I don't have a good point of comparison because I never did a strip club as a kid. It would depend on how bad the shit was. It would probably be more effective as a person. Actually, I'm not gonna lie though, I really feel like if I was a kid in a strip club, the worst part of that wouldn't be the women on stage, it would be the guys. Like,
I agree. I think it'd be weird guys too in a strip club.
But that for me would be the main, because like if there's a chick on stage like in a fucking underwear or whatever, like okay, I think that's inappropriate for kids, but like the guys there can be some grody fucking weirdos. That I think would be the main issue for me. More so. Yeah.
I'm just saying. I think it's the effect of seeing it as in person, live and in person, like going to a drag show. It has a bigger effect than just seeing it in the media. So that's why I'm.
But you're talking about a strip club again. The drag shows aren't strip clubs.
But they simulate a strip club with this.
You keep saying that, but I've been to ones
they
where
do. I'm telling you, Bosch.
I've been to drag shows.
We can argue semantics. I know. Well, not every drag show is the same. There's drag comedy shows. I agree that not all drag shows are exactly the same.
Okay,
but overwhelmingly, they tip at shows. That's why they go there.
What if we isolate?
That's a common thing at, I would say, 90% of drag shows.
So let me isolate the variables here. What if the drag show is these drag queens up there on stage telling jokes to a crowd, and there are kids there, and the kids can tip by going up and putting money in a little like black box that's on the side of the stage, which is what tends to happen with drag shows, because again, you don't put dollar bills in the thong strings of drag queens.
Do you think a drag comedy show, that comedy would be appropriate for children, or do you think the comedy would tend to be more adult?
Well, if this is a kids accessible drag show, I would assume this comedy would be accessible.
So you think the drag queens are like, oh, these graham crackers. What do you guys think about these graham crackers? Or do you, I mean, what do you think?
We can't. We're isolating variables. We can't be like, I'm like, okay, so this is the thing, and you're like, well, what if it's another thing? Like, it's a comedy show. The drag queens are wearing, they're like fully dressed. They're just dressed in their, you know, peacocking outfits or whatever. And the kids that are like, do you
hey,
think
you make a
that's
good
like,
point. Well, look, the peacocking though is, and you know, that term is used for somebody that's seeking attention. Correct.
Drag queens are absolutely seeking attention. Have you seen
Okay.
their dress?
Well, of course. So that's my point. Is the way they dress is in order to seek attention to their sexual organs for young kids.
No, whoa! You were doing fine. No. Seek attention. Yes. To their organs for young kids. No.
I don't think they showcase their breasts because they want to feminize. No, I'm not. Because these are men that want to feminize their bodies so they look like women. So that's how they accentuate their female sex organs. That's part of the drag genre.
What do you mean by accentuate? It's just
they accentuate their breasts. They accentuate their butts. They oftentimes put implants so their butts are bigger and more like a woman's butt.
So they look like what people think of as a woman. Yeah.
Agree. And they try to showcase those parts, the sexual parts of a woman.
Do you think having breasts is sexualizing nearby children?
I think
like
showing the breasts, not having them, showcasing.
Okay, so I said fully dressed. These drag queens. You can look up drag queen stories.
When you say fully dressed, does that mean their nipples covered? Because they still show cleavage.
They're dressed.
Do you think they're in a Hillary Clinton business suit, Boss? Have you ever seen a drag queen in a Hillary Clinton business suit?
Yes, I have seen drag queens in pantsuits. It's not that uncommon.
That's not very common.
No, it is.
Boss.
Yes, I promise.
No, it's
I promise
not.
you, I've
I don't want to argue that,
but
that's not the common. That's not the
I'm
common
talking about
of drag.
Fully dressed. So there's nothing like they're just wearing. Like you can look at drag queen story where these people are like dressed. Like they're just dressed. There's nothing. They're not like wearing pasties with like holes cut out of their dresses or whatever. They're dressed. So do you think in that environment this would be like harmful to children?
Yes, because it's a sexual confusion, because they might not know that that person's a biological male.
This is what I mean. You claim this criticism you have, but at the end of the day, your real criticism is you don't like it when men dress as women, which is fundamentally
That's not true.
an attack.
I don't mind if men dress like women. I think it's totally okay for men to dress as women, just not in front of children. You shouldn't expose children to that. Because they don't have the ability to know what's going on. They're not choosing to go there on their own accord. They're not getting in their cars and driving there. So they're getting taken there, not by choice. And if they're choosing that, then they're very confused. And they're being exposed to something that is very inorganic, very synthetic, that is not natural, and that can harm them.
First of all, so a couple of things. First of all, young people don't choose to do anything. Like if you're pretty much decide where you're going to. I don't know why that's like made to be I never chose to go to the dentist or chose to go to the grocery store. Like, yeah.
Just like a kid doesn't choose to get molested. It's the same vein.
What? Stop. I don't know why your mind is on that. We're nowhere near that. We're miles away.
I think we're... you and I would disagree. I think we're very close to molestation.
So that's because you think it's molestation for a kid to see a guy in a dress, which is insane. And
in a sexual manner, yeah, I think without them choosing.
We didn't say sexual manner. We only said dressed up as a woman.
A drag show, Plush, you're trying to argue that
okay, wait,
drag shows
hold on.
do not have a sexual connotation.
I
think we have to agree that drag shows have a sexual manner. If you watch RuPaul's Drag Race, it's a lot about sexuality and sex.
I'm talking about a non-sexual drag queen. You can literally look at drag queen. I just did. And most of the people I'm looking at are dressed in ostentatious but not at all sexual outfits. In fact, I would say the minority of them, and this is what my Google search history is, with all my gay shit or whatever, the minority of the drag queens and rippers are dressed in anything other than
Watch, if I Google right now for men get pregnant, Google will say yes. So just because you looked at Google, I don't trust Google. So
is that what you were reaching for the 20 seconds I was... Okay, look.
No, I'm just telling you, you're talking about Google, but Google's not the end-all be-all. If you Google, can men get pregnant? Google says yes. So
I'm
go
looking
figure.
At trans or drag queens who are not dressed sexually. So if we had one of those around children, you think that would be like molesting them because the kid might get confused or something?
Yes.
can you, just for my small brain, can you explain to me where the harm is coming from?
Let's grab
That
a
isn't
merch
because
stand.
you're afraid of birds.
Well, first of all, drag queens and birds are totally different. When I was a young kid, I used to get nervous when I would go on big bridges, and my dad, I'd be like, Dad, we're driving on a big bridge. That's a little different, you know, because you need to get used to going on bridges. You need to get used to going around birds. There's some things your parents need to expose you to that you might be scared of. Now, being made to be exposed to transgender drag queens is not a thing that I think is the same as a bird or stuff that.
Explain the harm in a way that
Because you're
isn't because of the bird.
over-sexualizing children. Now you're
No,
exposing them to
no,
something that they're
lost
not ready for. Their
You
brain
lost
is
it
not
already.
mature enough to
You
handle.
lost it already. We're not sexualizing the children. They're around fully dressed, non-sexually dressed people who are in drag. The children are not getting sexualized in any way.
I'm talking about a drag show. Is what I'm talking about.
I
Now,
am
if
also
you
talking about
just-
a drag show.
Yeah, I think that's why it's bad for the kids to go to the drag show because their brains are not able. They're not, you know, they're not done.
Not
being
able
exposed too
to,
young.
not able to what?
To comprehend what's fully going on.
Not able to comprehend a man who is dressed as a woman.
Yeah,
You know, this
they
was the
might be
subject of
attracted to
like.
it. They
This
might
is the
not
subject
know.
of like Bugs
They might,
Bunny cartoons 100 years ago or something.
they might not know what they're looking at, so they could have sexual confusion. I think it can have an effect. You're saying it has. You're saying it has
never
no
know
effect.
what they're looking at.
But do you
They're
really believe that,
stupid.
Bosh?
What does that have to
I'm saying, do you believe if a young kid sees, let's the I said that they do see the drag queens. Because you didn't
We're not
think that some
talking
drag shows
about
are kids.
thongs. We're talking about non-sexual outfits, fully dressed. I don't know why you keep
At a
running
drag
from
show. Because
Yes,
I'm
at a
not
dra-
running from that
fully
because
dressed.
oftentimes these drag events are sexualized. That's just common sense.
Okay, but you're saying that this is still a problem when they're non-sexualized. So I don't see why you keep running back to the thongs or whatever. Like, if the issue is
What do you mean when they're
fundamental to
non-sexual?
drag,
Dude, I don't think kids should be exposed to drag queens at too young of an age. That's my problem here. When they're old
you
enough, yes, they can go all
explain
they
the
want.
harm in a way that a
The
psychiatrist
sexual
doesn't listen to.
implantation and sexual confusion that can have on them later on in
What
life.
does that mean?
That means that they might not realize what they're looking at. They might think it is a woman, and then they find out that it's a man. And it oftentimes can create sexual confusion. That's
Is
a
there
fact. That's a
any
thing that's
evidence of
possible.
it? It's a fact. Is there any evidence of this?
You don't think people have ever been tricked by a transgender person? in their life?
Wait, no. Don't run. Is there any
I'm not
evidence
running.
of
I'm saying,
harm
do you think?
being done?
Yes. Okay. Did you ever watch the Jerry Springer show?
Harm being done.
I'm saying one of the biggest
From
things on the
being
Jerry Springer show,
attracted to
even
a
though the show is
drag
probably
queen
fake. Yeah, but let
and
me
then
tell you something.
realizing their drag.
Yes, there's a lot of harm because people didn't realize that they just had a gay relationship that they weren't consenting
By
to.
looking at them?
By being attracted to them, yes, you're being attracted to a man, and you don't know it. You're being because you're being
You
scammed.
realize
You're
that
being
your argument here would apply to feminine-looking men, right? Not even drag. If you were a feminine or androgynous-looking guy, then you would also probably have people look at you and think you're attractive.
That's not.
Yes, it is. This
I'm
is
not saying
this is
for
an
an
argument
androgynous
for the
person with
concept
long
of
hair.
gender
I'm
non-conformity.
talking about a drag show where people are simulating being the opposite sex, and they are sexually confusing children that might not understand what they're fully
Have you
looking
ever
at.
have
That's
you
my
never seen a
problem.
guy who looks like a girl, kind of like a hot guy? Who, like, has-
No, I've never thought a guy is hot personally. No.
Well, I mean, then why are the drag queens so confusing to you?
They're not confusing to me. They're confusing the young children.
So, as a
That's-
young child, did you ever see a guy and think it was a girl?
No, I never went to drag shows as a child.
No,
That's probably
like
why I don't
in
have
day-to-day
sexual
life,
confusion.
Alex. Like in outside.
The first time I was ever exposed to drag, I remember it was the movie Too Long Too.
No, like
And I was old enough to understand what that was. My mom explained it to me, and it
like
wasn't.
being outside and you see someone who you find attractive, and then you realize that they're a guy, even though you think you're attracted to women.
I think that could have some sort of effect on a person. Yes.
Okay, so you agree then that your argument would apply to feminine men and androgynous people, like
No,
David Bowie
no.
types.
I can no, not even close. I'm talking about not androgynous people. I'm talking about people that are buying, synthetic breasts and putting in butt implants to look like a female.
You're
And
only talking
there's
about being attracted,
drag queens.
being a kid and being attracted to someone you think is a woman, and then it turns out that they're a guy. That doesn't have to involve drag.
Say hello, Bo.
Your argument, if applied consistently, would be an argument that any gender nonconforming, androgynous, or feminine guy outside would be molesting the children around them, because those children would have the possibility of finding them attractive as a perceived woman, and then realizing maybe as they turned around or heard their voice that they were a guy.
That's not
No,
what
that
I'm
is
saying.
no, Alex. I'm helping you.
You're trying to tell me what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying.
I am telling you what you're saying. I'm reading it back to you.
That's not what I'm saying. Bush,
It
that's
is
not
what
what
you're
I'm saying.
saying.
A kid just seeing an androgynous person is not the same as going to a drag show and simulating sex and tipping them like a strip club and getting sexually confused.
Adding stuff. You keep adding. You're saying
At
that
a
it's
drag show,
harmful.
they dance and they do it in a sexual manner. That's common sense.
What if they're doing
we can't
stand-up?
even. What I'm saying is, I'm talking about drag shows. If they're doing stand-up,
I've been to drag shows, Alex. I know what they look
and
like.
and I've been to them and I've exposed them and I've seen
You
them
go
being
to drag
sexualized
shows
to children.
with the explicit intention of finding clips that you can put online to monetize people's outrage. I've been to them to have fun. I promise you, there are lots of different types of drag shows. And your argument is an argument against feminine guys, androgynous guys,
That's
or
not
like
true.
gender
I don't care.
nonconforming guys.
It's not gender nonconforming people. I'm talking about drag queens. I'm not talking about androgynous looking people, shims, he, hims, whatever you
Can't
want to call
that
it.
confusion happen? Like if you're like a young
Can people
kid or
get
whatever.
confused? Yes, people can get confused about everything. They can get confused, vice versa, with somebody that's transitioned the opposite way.
Wouldn't that lead to sexual
from female
confusion?
to male. That they can be confused. So I'm not saying that sexual confusion doesn't exist. I'm talking about parents dragging their kids to drag shows without their consent when they don't want to go and look at women or men, whatever you want to call it, drag queens, dancing in a sexualized manner. That's where I have an issue with. Not just walking down the street or CVS and seeing the androgynous cashier. I don't think that has the same effect.
All drag is gender nonconformity on stage with presumably bright colors. That tends to be involved.
Starts for
The
us
sexual
in
stuff you're adding
10
is optional. The
seconds.
tipping is optional. The kids being there is optional. The sexual dancing is optional.
5,
Drag fundamentally is only
3,
gender nonconformity as a presentation. So when you talk about, so the reason I'm trying to isolate the variables here is because your argument that it is sexual confusion inducing and thus tantamount to molestation for a kid to get confused about the sex of the person they're looking at, that can happen anywhere. It's not a drag specific thing. And since drag is not you're essentially just attacking the most ostentatious example of what you think the real issue is, which is any the issue
is drag shows, not seeing androgynous people.
You said it was molestation.
To go to a drag show where they did not choose, and to see people that sashay on a dance floor, and for them to tip them like as if they were at a strip club, that's where I have a problem. I don't care if they're at the grocery store and they see an androgynous person. That does not have the same effect.
Why not? So let's say,
because it's not done in a sexual manner. It's not done without their choice.
Let me put you in my shoes, okay? If we could, okay? There I am, a strapping young lad, quite tall, back at that age, big lad. And I'm going to the grocery store with my mom, of course. I'm not going there on my own. And I see a person there. I see them right? They're wearing yoga pants and a top that exposes something 4 or 5 inches. Very attractive. Now, I'm a strapping young kid, right? All right, I'm very attracted. But later, it turns out that this person comes around in a situation this is a guy. They were just a guy, just a feminine guy wearing, all this. Now, in that moment, I did experience, I didn't realize I did experience a kind of hook as I realized, I was into this person who I thought was.
Bam! Bosh, that's my whole entire point, is that realization that you had was a little confusing. Would you agree that it was a little confusing?
So you would agree this isn't about drag, it's about...
No, it is about drag. I think it's the drag.
In the
no,
you
because
just
drag is where they're exposed to it. I'm just saying that is where they're more likely to have that sexual confusion. It's more likely to happen at a drag show that their parents drag them to that it has a sexual connotation than just going to CVS or going to Ralph's.
The logical extension of your argument would apply.
I'm not talking about logical extensions. I'm talking about
I know you're not.
drag shows. I'm talking about drag shows.
I know we don't want to talk about logic here. We just want to talk about that.
No, you want to play logic games. I don't have time for logic games. I'm trying to talk about.
I'm solving
I'm talking
Rubik's
about
cubes in my head.
Yeah, I know you're playing logic games. I'm not trying to play mind games, dude. I'm cut and dry. I want to be very binary, ones and zeros. Drag shows not good for kids because it causes that same thing that in your brain happened. Oh, this is a little confusing. And now you might grow up and you might be bisexual.
Well,
do you think that could have had do you think that could have had an effect on you later becoming bisexual?
Nothing could have stopped me from there was no force in the world that could have changed that. I would have had to have died before I started for that to not be the case.
And I cheerlead you to do that. I think you should have all the gay, heterosexual that you want. I don't think that's bad, or even a lot of people on the right, oh, that's so immoral. I'm a libertarian. You can do whatever you want. I just don't think it should happen to children. Do you understand my argument? I think
I wasn't hurt. Like, just seeing that, what happened to me in that grocery store is the thing I think that happens probably to a lot of people. Where you see a person who you think is attractive from a certain angle, and then you see like a pretty different angle, and then you decide to but you, like, what you just said to me, like, oh, that's a bit of gender confusion. Do you think that might have been what turned you on? But the conservative rhetoric right now is about preventing any pervasive social influences that turn people gay or trans. The logic you're suggesting right now is that the mere existence of gender non-conforming people are a corrosive force.
No,
something that turns
I've not said
gay.
that, and that's not how I feel, Vosh.
You asked me
if
it contributed to turning me bi.
Well, I'm trying to ask you that. Yeah, I don't think that that's the case for every single person, but I'm saying, I'm trying to ask you as that example that you were using. Do you think that it had any effect?
Things like that can make people more
I think that it's possible, yeah.
Do you think children can be put in situations where they're exposed to people that may make them lead to be?
I don't think people should be exposed to sexual situations. Now, I don't whether a person's sexual orientation, I don't think that matters. They can be exposed to gay, straight people. I don't think that's bad. I think it's the sexualization of the drag show that is bad. You see what I'm saying?
But you said the confusion that I experienced when that guy in the grocery store turned around. That was like
I said it's possible. I said it's possible that could have an effect. I think that's. I mean, would you agree that that's possible?
Well, so if you say it's not impossible that it has an effect, then you are saying that exposure to gender non-conforming people can elicit.
I said that's a possibility. Yeah, I think being exposed to homosexual stuff at a young age could make you a homosexual.
Okay, so then is that not an argument that conservatives would use in order to remove any exposure to gay or trans people or gender people because it's corrupting their children? That's what they did in Florida. Don't say gay boys, literally.
You know the bill doesn't even anywhere in this says
no, it says preventing people talking about sexuality when talking to church. And I'm sure that little Mrs. Pennycock is going to refrain from calling her husband.
If you want to talk about the Don't Say Gay bill, real quick, this is what's different. When you and I were in school, our teachers didn't have a Facebook profile. They didn't have an Instagram. I didn't know my teachers personally. So it's now, in this day and age, a kid knows everything about their teacher's personal life. So they're being exposed to their relationship, to their husbands, to their gay relationship, straight relationship.
If they look them up.
Yeah, which oftentimes kids do because the kids are extremely online.
But kids can look up anything. They can look up titties.
Of course. You and I didn't have the ability to look up our teacher's gay crews when we were young. We didn't have that ability, so that's different. So that's why they're trying to protect kids from over-sexualization of their personal life.
Their Facebook profile pictures of their teachers? Couldn't they just
Because they don't need to be involved in their personal sexual matters. That's
they're
why.
They're not involved. Wait,
because
they're not
this is what I argue. That a gay person and a straight person is no different. Let me make this. I don't think a gay person and a straight person is any different other than who they choose to have sex with. So we shouldn't define people by what they do in their bedroom. We should define people by what they do, how they conduct themselves in the classroom. So we shouldn't talk with our students or young kids about their sex life. That's normal. That's not crazy.
You're not talking about your sex life with your students. If you are a gay teacher and you mention that you have a husband, I knew a fair amount about the partners of my teachers when I was young because it just comes up. In kindergarten class, like, everyone in the classroom is a fucking moron. Like, the teacher will be like, how was everyone's weekend? And the kids will be like, I'm good! And then the teacher will be like, oh, I had a good time. What did you do? You know, and it's like, oh, my husband. And then, like, bam, the fucking Florida cops come and shoot her twice in the back of the head.
That's not what's going to happen,
well, hold on.
You're just so ingenuine when you say
so
that.
wait, you're
exaggerating and you're being...
No, that's happening everywhere. So,
oh, there's cops running into guns because the teacher said they had a relationship with their husband.
No, you're right. I'm sorry. The idea of cops going into a school is
And I agree. I think Uvalde, they wouldn't run in. I mean, you and I agree with that. They didn't think they should have done more. But I'm just saying, listen, I don't even dislike you. I'm not even trying to say, and I'm not even anti-gay or anti-trans. What I'm saying is I just, my point is, I don't think sexualized events that they're not choosing to go to. Now, if they see an androgynous person at the grocery store, that's gonna happen. That's life. There's gay and straight people. I think there's a big population of our community that is LGBTQI++, whatever you want to call it. I don't think that that's a thing we have to protect kids and they can't ever see a gay person. That's not what I feel. I'm talking about specific drag events that tend to be more sexual. And so I agree. A teacher talking about being married to a woman, I don't even think that's a big deal. I'm talking about sex. I'm talking about sexualized things. I think we should protect kids from that until they're old enough to make that decision. And that can be at the age of consent in whatever states are, whether it's 17, 16, 18. I don't know. Every state has different rules.
A non-sexualized
you might know better than me.
show, it's okay.
What I'm talking about is, no, I don't think sexualized children, even a non-sexualized drag show, kids should be at, because it always has a sexual, because it's a sexual confusion thing. It's the weird.
You can't. You keep doing this. Thing. You can't say it's about the sexualization, and I'm like, what about a non-sexualized drag show? And you're like, well, no, it's actually about the
because it's always based in sex, because your sex and gender are very similar, and so it's people that are doing non-gender conforming, so that's why it causes confusion. Because it's people playing make-believe. Now, people have been doing this forever. Shakespeare, they would have the male actor play. I agree. I agree, and that's why when you do this at a young age, when your mind's super sensitive, it can have effects later on in life.
Or like people
mascots are different than a drag queen.
Do Halloween? No, because I'm saying non-sexualized drag queen. You're like, well, the confusion, dude. Trust me, kids are way more confused by what the fuck mascots are at Disneyland than they ever are. That's a very simple. What's a drag? Oh, well, that's a guy in a dress. Oh, okay, cool. It's kind of all make fun. What's a mascot? Is there another person in there? Like, kids get freaked out. Kids get freaked out by mascots. That shit's nightmare fuel. People stay up. Kids stay up late at night. Five Nights at Freddy's is literally a hit.
Yeah, I agree. People are scared of clowns. You said people are scared of birds. That's different than going to a place they didn't choose to go to and simulating like they're at a strip club. It's drag queen. It's different.
But you said even if it's non-sexualized drag, that it's still harmful. So all the strip club stuff
because it's an adult theme. It's too adult for children.
What is adult about a guy?
In a bar, I think you have to be 21, and oftentimes these are at bars.
It's just a building. They don't let the kids drink.
Listen, when I was 18 and I was in college, I wanted to go in a bar so bad they wouldn't let me, but they're gonna let in 7 or 8 year olds. No, not okay.
That's the issue is the idea of a mixed.
No, I'm just saying these are adult venues where little kids should not be at. Whether it's drag queen comedy hour or drag queen thong hour, it's not okay for little children to be exposed to that at a young age when they didn't choose.
So again, non-sexual drag show in a non-typically 21 or older venue. Let's say an exhibition hall or like a hotel exhibition conference room that was rented out, which is normally available to people of all ages if you can pay the fee. Is that harmful to kids?
Yeah, even if the venue is not just necessarily an adult venue, but the themes are adult. If it has an adult theme for young children, that is harmful.
What theme?
The theme of sexual confusion and non-gender, whatever conformity, whatever you want to call it, whatever word salad you want to use it with all your logic games. I'm talking about men dressed in a sexualized manner to insinuate to be sexualized women. Kids should not be exposed to that. Whether it's at a church, whether it's at a bingo hall, whether it's at a hotel. I don't believe that drag can ever be considered non-sexual when its main focus is about changing your sex from male to female or female to male. So it's impossible for a drag show inherently to not be non-sexual. You see what I'm saying? But a sexual costume, it's different than a jack-o'-lantern costume. It's different than a Jason.
You realize that
it is a costume where you're changing your gender, you're changing your sex.
You realize a common Halloween costume is literally just dressing up like the other sex, right? Like in middle school, 3 of the football guys from my what's it called? for my guys. They all dressed up in like blonde wigs and had like fake tits or whatever. And they were like, I guess they would have been like 12 or 13 or something. And they spent the entire day like raucously yelling and throwing fucking rocks at their friends or whatever. Is that molestation? Or I didn't think there was anything weird about it. Like, in terms of how sexual,
I think that is a little weird. Yeah, I think it's weird for 12-year-olds to probably dress into that idea.
So in terms of how weird it was up there was like a person putting 2 basketballs in their shirt and pretending they were both, which I think I saw kids doing when they were 8. If that's sexual confusion, molestation, gender nonconformity, and again, like, this applies to almost this is everything all over the place.
Well, it's very nuanced, Bosh. I don't think you understand nuance very well. It's like certain situations can be different, where you can be more sexual and less sexual. Now, a kid putting a basketball on his oh, I'm a pregnant woman. I don't think that's inherently as sexual as a young kid putting on a dress and sashaying all day around class. I think they're a little different.
Well, okay, what if the kid's just sashaying without the dress? Which, again...
They're allowed to sashay, that's fine.
So wait, how does the addition of the dress make it more sexual? That's not even changing their perception.
Because you're changing your sex! You're changing your sex! That's why it's more sexual, bud. It's that simple. So
I keep telling you that your argument is just fundamentally one against gender nonconformity. And you keep saying, yes it is, but then when I point out that that's what your argument is, you're like, no it's not. You're saying, so here's the line. Changing the subject. No, wait, just let me just get
I'm saying when young kids wear dresses, that's not necessarily great either. I think that can cause sexual confusion for them as well.
Any kind of gender nonconformity that would include trans people, because trans people literally change their sex, not their costume, would be tantamount to projecting an AOE grooming field on their environment. In such an environment, in a world where people are naming themselves which tribes are when do I get to shoot them? This logic is essentially just a genocidal call to action against trans or gender nonconforming people. It's the argument that the mere act of gender nonconformity through act or presentation is sufficient to elicit confusion to children around you, which is a kind of molestation. It's like you're accusing us of being like anime villains. We're
that's not what I'm doing at all. And just think about how many words you had to say there to make no point with all due respect. Well, I know, but you're just wasting them. We don't need to. Listen, I like the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. I understand you want to play logic games. You want to try to compare apples and oranges. I'm talking about kids at drag shows being sexualized in events that they did not choose to go to that have adult themes. I think that is not okay. Now, little kids... You haven't stripped them apart. You said no, false, Bosh. That's why you're being ingenuine. That's why you're being disingenuous. No. Bosh, you said that there are drag shows that are too sexual for children. Do you agree? Okay. Well, then you and I would argue that I think most shows are too sexual for kids. You think some are okay for kids. So in a way, we kind of agree that kids shouldn't go to certain. I think kids shouldn't go to all drag shows. You think kids shouldn't just go to some drag shows. I believe that we can deduce that.
Well, this would be
No.
Well, no.
Let's just get to the lecture at hand. Please, Bosh, because we have to wrap this up. Listen, Bosh, I can't do this dance all day. Bosh, I don't want to just... Bosh, listen, let's just quit playing games. I don't have time for all the QT games. But let's just get to where we can agree to disagree, and then we can move on to the open questions, because I'm sure there's a lot of them. You agree that some drag shows are too sexual for children. Not all, but some. I think 99% of drag shows are too sexual for children. I think that's what we can just disagree. We can compare non-binary people at the grocery store. We can talk about students all day long. The debate is about drag shows. And I think we've made it very clear where you stand on it and where I stand on it. So, I mean, I think we should move on. What's wonderful is we're just butting heads at this point. We're comparing apples and oranges. And honestly, I'm a busy man. I don't have time to do two.
Of course. What 1% are you
for 1%? Maybe the drag queen story times, I guess sometimes when they're dressed in pantsuits. How about that?
Would that not be
It could, but it's possible. I'm just talking about that because I believe in percentages. I'm sure there's somewhere out there that's not the worst thing possible. They are bad and not meant to be for children. Now, you would disagree. You would say that there's just a small percentage that are bad for children. So at the end of the day, we both agree that there's some drag shows that kids are not okay to go to. So I can live with that. If you can live with that, I think we're moving on. But still, we still at least agree. We still at least similarly agree. I mean, there are some drag shows that kids shouldn't go to, and I'm okay with it.
This is like a person who's like believes the Holocaust was just, saying that we similarly agree because I think like one Jewish guy who like murdered his wife should be burned.
No, the Holocaust
like,
is
well,
bad.
You believe one person.
Don't bring up the Holocaust. Seriously, we're on YouTube.
No, I know,
but seriously, I don't. It's not funny. The Holocaust is not funny. The Holocaust is not funny.
Whoa! I didn't say the Holocaust was funny. I said that the comparison between the situation.
Comparing anything to the Holocaust is not wacky and funny.
Okay, I didn't know we were sensitive here. Fine. Anyway,
I'm not sensitive. I just don't think that's wacky and funny.
I think that a comedian's job is to offend in a way that challenges.
I agree. Oh my God, I agree. I agree. I love offensive humor.
You love Ricky? Okay, good. I thought we disagreed on this for a second. All right, okay. Anyway, look, gender nonconformity is not the thing that makes drag shows successful. Just this. There are things that there are absolutely drag shows that are successful, and I think it's important to like be able to identify. I don't think that this need be like super. It's just not a interesting conversation. I feel like it's just a proxy issue. Like a lot of people who have these positions, just like they have issues. It's a broader thing.
But I don't.
Maybe not you, Alex. I would never accuse you. But some people.
And I think there's people on the right that do. And I agree with you. I think there's a lot of gay panic and gay outrage that is unnecessary. And I think it makes people look bad because I would argue that every single person alive is a gay family member or a gay, somebody gay in their life is probably so we shouldn't hate gay people for their sexual. I don't think so. I don't think that's bad at all. People say, "Oh, you're homophobic or transphobic." I'm not at all. I actually encourage people. I want to lift up people that feel like they're being denigrated by society, and I mean that, whether it's trans or gay people. I just don't want kids to have to be exposed to stuff that I consider adult themed until they're an adult. That's it. I don't think kids should smoke cigarettes. I don't think kids should drink alcohol. I think they should wait till they be of age and they consent to sexual connotation type stuff.
Oh, I don't suppose you're of the opinion that, say, like a gay couple kissing on TV would constitute something inappropriate for children.
That's not necessarily bad, but then you look at these Disney movies where now they're inserting, even in Disney's own head of programming, said we're going to put in polysexual, polyamorous couples, we're going to put in pansexual characters, and all those other pansexual. So I do think that is, I just think it's a little, I think it's done, not organically, it's done inorganically.
It's in a way, they're a business. They're doing whatever they think is in the best market.
Well, exactly, and this is the problem. I think multinational companies, corporations, are actually inherently evil. I think Apple computers, Apple, iPhones, when you look at them and their business practices, they have suicide nets at their Foxconn, factories in China because their employees are so overwhelmed. They jump off buildings, and so they put bigger and stronger nets instead of helping them and give them a better life and pay them more money. So I think inherently companies are evil. Personally, so if they're doing evil stuff to kids, I think that's evil.
I completely agree. I'm a communist. I believe that the leaders of these companies, the shareholders, should be put on tribunal and they should be seized by the workers who work at them. I hope that if that's not too radical for you, obviously, I don't know if having gay people in movies is quite tribunal level, but there's definitely some wacky stuff.